So there's a beautiful Gita Dhyana Shlokam, an introductory verse or a prayer which is chanted before one begins the Adhyayanam or the study of the Gita. सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्. This verse beautifully explains what Gita is, what Bhagavad Gita is. Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the entire Veda Shastra. So here, Madhusudana Saraswati, of the great Acharyas who has given commentary on Bhagavad Gita, he says, Sarvopanishado Gavaha. So all the Upanishads are like that of cows. And Arjuna is like the calf. Now, the calf can only digest milk. Calf can only partake cow's milk. And now, what is the place of Sri Krishna in the entire scheme of things? Sri Krishna is the milkman, Dogdha Gopalanandanaha. So, the Vedas are like that of the cows. Sri Krishna is like that milkman or somebody who facilitates the calf to partake the milk from its mother. Partho vatsa sudhir bhokta dugdham gitamratam mahat. Bhagavad Gita is the milk from this cow called Upanishad. That means it is the sara, the essence of the Upanishad. And milk is one of the very easily digestible foods for the infants. So, Bhagavad Gita, compared to that of the Upanishad, is in a very simple way, in an effective manner, one can absorb the entire vision of the Shastra. In Mahabharata itself, there is a quote, Gita Sugita Kartavya. One must study Bhagavad Gita. Kim anyaihi shastraihi vistaraihi. What is the use of studying any other shastras forgetting Bhagavad Gita? Or it's in a way, there is a praise for Bhagavad Gita. It's not that one should not study other shastras. The author seems to say Bhagavad Gita is the most important. So if you have studied Bhagavad Gita well, it's like you have absorbed the vision of the Upanishads very well. Very well. You know, the whole Vedic literature is interlinked. You study Upanishads, then it helps you in the study of the Bhagavad Gita. You study Bhagavad Gita, it helps you in the study of Upanishads. And never miss the point, this study of Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita is the study of your life itself, not some book. So that is the place of Bhagavad Gita in the whole scheme of things. So it is one of the most beautiful sacred books which gives the vision for life. You know, often when I take some sessions for youngsters, I keep telling, everything that you buy comes with a user manual. Washing machine you buy, you get a user manual, how to use, what to do, what are the features of all of this. And then mobile phone, this, that, everything. But we hardly pay any attention to it. Either it again goes back into the dabba or we put it into the dustbin. But when some problem arises with that particular gadget, we do not know how to handle it. We do not know how to handle it. But probably, if one had studied the user manual properly, one would not have landed up in that problem itself, or even because of some reason that problem arises, one is at a place where one can handle that problem. So similarly, this deha, body, is like a gadget, a machine, very sophisticated one in fact. And this also has come with a user manual, which is the Bhagavad Gita. Very beautifully, Bhagavad Gita gives the entire vision for life. The uniqueness of the Bhagavad Gita is that it gives the vision for life, and it also gives pointers, techniques, it gives a lifestyle through which you can bring this vision into a reality. So that's why at the end of every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So it goes on, the verse continues. That means what? It is Brahma Vidya. It is a Vidya which is giving knowledge about the reality. Brahman means reality, the real. So Brahma Vidya, Bhagavad Gita is a Brahma Vidya, that which gives the knowledge about reality. What is that one thing which is real in life? And Yoga Shastre, it also gives a lot of insights about the yoga. Yoga here means the lifestyle. Yoga means the lifestyle. Usually, the moment when we use the word yoga, what comes to your mind is the Shirasasana, Tadasana, Adarasana. No, here in Bhagavad Gita, yoga in different contexts, in different chapters, it gets the meaning in a slightly different way. It has a very unique meaning that has to be understood, interpreted, and absorbed. So, Yoga Shastra, a beautiful way of living, a lifestyle, Bhagavad Gita gives you, so that you can effectively live life with joy and contentment. That's a very beautiful thing about Bhagavad Gita. Now, you see, then the relevance of this knowledge. Why this knowledge? Everybody seems to be living what is there. But is just mundane living the end of life? Just sleeping, eating, doing something? That's all? Is there anything, something more to life? Yes, Gita is for somebody who at least feels that there is something more to life. Something more to life than just eating, sleeping, working, that's all. No, there's something more to life. There's something more, a better, greater possibility. One can discover something more than just this mechanical life. You know, you wake up at a particular time. The two COVID pandemic has induced such a monotonous living for so many people, but for another large group discovered this time and then utilized it for great things also. But otherwise, life becomes a kind of monotonous thing. You wake up at a particular time, you do your chores, then you work for some time, then there's some entertainment for you, and that's it. Over. But then there is something more than that in life. One can discover this vision of Vedanta, that you are the reality of life. There's nothing real in life except you, the real you. So there's a possibility of this vision. So Gita gives this vision, Gita has this vision. Gita is for somebody who wants to discover this. So technically, Gita is called as Moksha Shastra. Moksha Shastra. A Shastra, a source of knowledge, which is talking about moksha, freedom. Now you see, all human pursuits, the rishis observed life. Rishis were the great observers. A scientist is an observer. Scientist also observes physical world, human life in all its aspects, not just one aspects, collectively, very deeply, not superficially. So Rishi is also that kind of a scientist of life, who have rishis have observed life very deeply and very keenly. And they saw human life, and then they categorized all the human pursuits into four categories. So if you look at life, and you can easily categorize under these four categories. What are those four categories? Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So our Western observers were also observing life. And these rishis have discovered this thousands of years back. In fact, you can't even fix a particular date because all this is in the Vedas, timeless literature. But then you might have, those who are familiar might have heard this economist or psychologist Maslow. Maslow gave the pyramid of hierarchy of needs. So he also observed human life and then brought a structure. He said all human beings are seeking something. All human pursuits can be put in this pyramid. Somebody look into your phone. Somebody's phone is making some noise. So he said, first, the pursuits of human beings are like this. For the fulfillment of physiological needs, humans do undertake some activity. So, what are the physiological needs? You need a shelter, food, clothing, shelter. So, it becomes the basic human needs. In order to gain that, humans are trying to do something or always trying to seek them. After that, a human being is not just satisfied with just food, clothing, and shelter. Person needs family. So, social needs. The person needs a friend circle. Then that's all? No. Beyond that, maybe a human being seeks some psychological needs also. Entertainment, rest, this, that. So he put another category in the pyramid. Then does a human being stop there? Okay, I have food, clothing and shelter. I have my family. I have my friend circle. Everything is going well. No. Now I want to make a mark in life. I want to be known. I want fame. I want to be recognized. I want to be appreciated. So there's self-esteem needs. Maslow put a slot saying self-esteem needs. That's all. Okay. This is also in the to-do list. That is also checked. Food, clothing, shelter, family and friends. Then my psychological needs of entertainment and this and that. Then self-esteem needs also. I have a position, name, fame in the society. Is there anything beyond? Yes, you observe that people who have all of this yet are seeking. So after this, the person probably goes and joins an NGO. So Maslow observed and made another category. He said self-actualization. The person has some potential. He's trying to actualize it. He or she is trying to put all his talents or her talents out there, master it. So there is self-actualization. That's all he could observe. Then he said, finally, one who has all these things checked, that sort of a person is going to be satisfied in life, or all human beings are only running towards fulfilling these categories of my pyramid. That's it. That was the thing. There is criticism of it. There is that theory can be applied in the society also. There are some things which are not viable, this, that, but yeah, a particular model. But then rishis just didn't stop at this. Rishis did recognize every human being is pursuing artha, securities. One needs some security to live. After that, After those securities are gained, then the person is looking for something more than that, kama. Kama is not a bad word in Sanskrit or anything. Kama simply means desires. Kama simply means desires or pleasures, any sense pleasure. So, wanting a pizza is a kama. That's all. That's all it has. There's no negative connotation to it all the time. So, a person seeks kama, pleasures. One goes for various things in order to gain pleasures. In the introductory session also we touched upon that subject, where today entire society is constructed in such a way that it makes you keep seeking pleasures all the time, all the time. You go from airport to your destination, there are hoardings after hoardings. New apartment just at this price, new diamond ring at this price, the new pizza place, new restaurant, new this, new that. It keeps you, if the society wants you to keep seeking pleasures. Okay? But then rishis observed, okay, one needs to seek artha, one may have the needs to pursue sense pleasures, but then it should be backed by dharma. It should be backed by dharma. So, what is this dharma then? Dharma is a very, very deep word. People have written books and books, volumes and volumes on dharma. What dharma is? What dharma is? So, dharma, simply to simplify it and present it so that in a given context you all can understand what is to be done in a particular situation without hurting yourself and without hurting others also. That is dharma. What that which is to be done in a particular situation without hurting yourself, without hurting others, or which creates least disturbance to you, least disturbance to others also. That is dharma. So the rishis said, yes, human beings, you are all seeking artha and kama. May you seek it within the box of dharma, not outside it. Otherwise, you will only be creating displeasure or unhappiness for yourself in the long run. In the long run. So, having sought artha and kama, a person sometimes may also seek dharma. Now, I gave you the first definition of dharma, one meaning of dharma. Another meaning of dharma could also be punyam, punya. Punya, really speaking, doesn't have an English equivalent. Why? Because you see, a language is very peculiar to its culture. A particular language will have words from its culture, not outside it. Not outside it. So, what is the Sanskrit word for pizza? We don't have it. Why? Because in the culture where Sanskrit developed, there is no such thing called pizza. There's no such thing called pizza. So, similarly, in the culture where the language has evolved, English, you do not have an equivalent for punya at all. Sometimes when you open English to Sanskrit to English dictionary, you may have the translation of merit. What does it talk about? Merit? No. Punya, but person who has who is born and brought up in Sanatana Dharma, when I say punya, you can very easily understand what punya is. So punya, for people who may still have a little doubt about it, it is the invisible result of a good deed. Invisible result of a good deed. That which is put in your account. It's put in a person's karma account. Result of a good action. That is the punya. So you see this moment in life also. In the religious life or life of a Sanatana Dharmi, a person is seeking artha kama, person has done to some extent, then the person, suddenly one fine day you see that person who was never in the ashram and temple, now the person is in the temple suddenly. the person is doing some havan, the person is doing something, undertaking a yatra. Why? Dharma, artha and kama did not really satisfy the person. So the person is now seeking something more than artha and kama. The person is seeking good result, invisible results. So that becomes dharma. क्लास चल रहा है, बाद में आइए, बाद में आइए, क्लास चल रहा है. The person is seeking something more than these two, artha and kama. So the person turns religious. So you can see this movement in different cultures also, not just here. You can see that. But then, can just seeking this punya solve the fundamental seeking? The person is seeking. Basically, every human being is seeking something. One at the onset of the pursuit or in the middle way also, the person is not really clear what I am really seeking. But the seeking continues through artha, kama, and now through dharma also. The seeking continues. But does the seeking stop? Does that moment, that actions, that moment in life, in order to gain something, I need to gain something, I need to gain something, because of which we are undertaking so many pursuits, does it stop even in just by seeking dharma? You see that? Then, if that is so, all the temple goers must have been beaming with, shining with happiness. No, unfortunately, they're worried, they're praying. Of course, it's a great setup. We are not demeaning it or anything. We are making an observation. We are not condemning anything. Who am I to condemn anything? Who are you to condemn anything? Who are we to condemn anything? We are making an observation, a philosophical observation. Does this seeking of a religious life, a life just based on again prayers, and what are those prayers for? Those prayers are again for artha and kama. Give me this, give me that, I need this, I need that. Okay, fine. You need things in life. But is that solving the fundamental problem of life? And what is that fundamental problem of life? That you are always inadequate. You always feel inadequate. You never feel complete. You never feel satisfied. You're never contented. You're never joyful. In spite of things. In spite of things. You, you sought after dharma and artha, or take the Maslow pyramids model, all these needs, physiological needs, psychological needs, family needs, self-esteem needs, self-actualization, all that you have done, you are doing, but are you contented and happy? Now, this is a question we are not abstractly putting somewhere. Vedanta is self-enquiry. This question I pose to myself. Do I feel adequate and contented in spite of all the things that I have, all my feathers in my cap, all the pursuits that I have undertaken, or do I still feel a lack? Do I feel lack? Do I have a sense of incompleteness within? So, in front of the mirror, when I stand, do I feel complete or do I feel incomplete? When I look at myself, do I feel complete or incomplete? Do I feel free or do I feel bound? So this becomes a philosophical question. Now, that's why rishis discovered that it doesn't just stop there. It doesn't just stop by seeking something, some prayers, results, some effort, some diamond, some apartment, some this and that, and it doesn't, the human being will never feel inadequate. There will always be a sense of lack, because fundamentally you have started with a sense of lack And whatever you add to that, it's not going to solve. It's like, you have black color paint, you have a black hue or black color, and then you go on adding white or pink or red or blue. It's never going to turn white, because fundamentally something there is a characteristic something which will not allow any other color to manifest, any other color to manifest. So that's something here in a human mind, in a human being, which doesn't allow you to feel adequate, to feel complete, to feel the whole, to feel Purnam, is Ajnana, is ignorance about your own nature. One is unaware of one's own nature, what is one's reality, but then, whether you want it or not, from the time you're born, the race of life starts, whether you want it or not. It's as though tying the person to a treadmill by some chains, and then it's switched on. Now there is no option but to keep running. So life has become like that. Or life is like that sometimes. So before even you realize you are in the same race, you do not know. It's not that you plan to be ignorant. You don't want to understand life. You don't want to know yourself. No, it's not like that. But Naisargika, this is the natural setup. This is how life is. But then there's an option to get out of it. Rishis gave us this knowledge, this Shastra, and showed that there is another pursuit, which is moksha. This moksha is an effort to gain this freedom, internal freedom, to discover one's own true nature, which will make you feel adequate, which shows that you are adequate, which shows that you were never inadequate. It was just because of ignorance you felt all the things that you felt. The rishis showed us this pursuit of moksha. So Gita is this moksha shastra which has the capacity to put an end to this fundamental problem of human beings. Our Guru, my Guru, Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji, always beautifully used to say, the fundamental problem of human beings is a life of becoming or feeling inadequate. Feeling of inadequacy which is ever there. You constantly want to become something. In why you want to become? Because you think that by becoming that you are going to be free and happy. You're going to be free and happy. The person had a particular haircut. The person changed the haircut. So he became something else. In order to feel good and free, that's just a 5-minute thing. So just by changing external anything, you're never going to find this adequacy, completeness within. Raymond for a complete man. So just by putting on that suit, it's not going to make you a complete man. Or by any other designer thing for a woman. No, external things. In fact, it is there in our experience only. But somehow, alas, we do not even have time to analyze our own experiences. You see that. We keep hopping from one thing to another in search of this freedom, in order to get away from this feeling of inadequacy, incompleteness in the heart, but it doesn't give you. You go to the mall to feel adequate, but then all the stores there only makes you feel inadequate because you cannot afford most of the things or many things there. So you have this feeling of inadequacy or irritability or something in the heart. You want to forget it for some time. That's why you go into a cinema. 2.5 hours, you have a suspended reality. After that, you come back to the same old thing and you discover that you are the same old fool. So like this, we keep on going behind things. But There seems to be no permanent solution. Yes, they seem to be temporary solutions. If at all, if we want to give a label to it, at max, you can give it as a temporary solution. So there's a headache, you pop in a paracetamol or some other painkiller. Day one, temporary solution, good, it gives a solution. Day two, again you wake up with a headache, you pop in a pill. 15th day, you are again facing the same problem. So, what is the wise thing to do? Again, to pop in a pill, painkiller, or to go consult a doctor and see what is fundamentally wrong and seek a solution at the fundamental level or a permanent solution. So, Vedanta has permanent solutions, not temporary solution. That's why Vedanta doesn't appeal easily to many people, because it doesn't really promise any quick fixes like that. Learn Sanskrit in 30 days, learn Tamil in 30 days, learn thing in 20 days. Become stress free in 3 days. We never advertise like that. Become stress free in 3 days. No. Because 30, 40 years you have lived in a particular way. Think then 3 days life will, there are quick fixes like that. Sometimes this kind of an attitude becomes a obstacle in our own spiritual life. Why? Because the modern society is so used to this 1 minute thing, 2 minute thing. Hungry, buy 2 minutes Maggie. Hungry, just add hot water and cup of noodles is ready. Hungry, call Zomato, we deliver within 20 minutes. So everything you quick fixes are promised, but then what are those quick fixes? Do that quick fixes do any good to you in life if you really analyze it? They don't. That's why Vedanta is a Shreyo Marga. It's a Marga of Shreyas, not Preyas. There are two paths in life that one can take. One is Shreyas, another is Preyas. Preyas is this quick fixes, temporary solutions. Something which makes you feel good and joyful and pleasurable temporarily or immediately, but on a long term, it only leads you to dukkha or unhappiness. That path is preyas. That path gets the Sanskrit name preyas. You see that modern life is only preyas. Nobody has time to think, put a permanent solution for their own body. Forget the potholes and the road. For one's own body, one is not ready. One is not ready. They want to just pop a pill and then expect everything to be all right. Everything to be all right. Diet, exercise, sleep, being stress free, a healthy lifestyle. No, no, no. I don't pay much attention to all that. Or even if I pay attention to all that, I keep talking about it. That's all. I'll keep talking about it, but to follow is not up to me. So this marga is preyo marga, preyas, quick fixes and temporary solution. But Vedanta, spiritual inquiry, is Shreyas, the marga of Shreyas. Here, temporarily, you put efforts. I mean, immediately, you may not find all the answers and all the solutions. But then, over a period of time, you find permanent solution to your problems of life. Problems of life. That doesn't mean that immediately it doesn't give you pleasure, doesn't mean that it will give you dukkha or anything. But you put forth effort now, but it will lead you to the fruitful results in coming days or as you go further in the journey. That is the Vedanta marga. That is the Vedanta. That's why you see, if a Baba or a sannyasi or somebody promises, now I have this mala, 1500 only, it will solve all your problems. Tomorrow, suppose I were to put a board there somewhere in Rishikesh, I'll have 1,000 people in the line. But then, here we are, somewhere we are ready to help you inquire into your own life, then not many people are interested in the society. Not many people are interested. Why? Everybody wants just a quick fix solution, that's all, not more than that. So, this moksha, the pursuit of moksha, is finding permanent solution to the problem of life, to the fundamental problem of life. So you have this sense of inadequacy. This Shastra puts an end to that. That's why, in other words, Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini. This problem is compared to that of a roga, a disease. A disease whose cure is this Shastra, Bhagavad Gita. So Shankaracharya has beautifully sung in Bhajagovindam, Bhagavad Gita Kinchita Dhita Ganga Jalalava Kanika Pita Sakrita Piyena Murari Samarcha Kriyate Tasya Yamena Na Charcha. What does the verse say? Bhagajagovindam, very beautiful. We have both the factors here. Bhagavad Gita Kinchita Dhita. That person who has done even a little adhyayanam, little study of Bhagavad Gita. Ganga Jalalava Kanika Pita. That person who has partaken even a drop of of Ganga. So this is a symbolism here. Kinchita Dhita Kanika Pita. That means Ganga represents knowledge, not just the waters. One who has absorbed even a little bit of this knowledge. One who has absorbed even a little bit of knowledge. One who has done the archana of Murari. One who has faithfully worshipped Lord through through one's own duties. Again, you have to bring the Bhagavad Gita vision there. One who has done the worship of the Lord through all the duties and responsibilities that one has to do in life. That is the real puja. That is the real archana. That person will never have a discussion with Yama. That person will never keeps arguing with the Yama. Yama is also symbolism here. Yama represents fear. Yama represents death. So that is symbolism there. So that is the place of this Bhagavad Gita, which gives this knowledge, which puts an end to the fundamental problem of humans, fundamental problems of humans. The tragedy or the need or requirement is, the tragedy is so many people do not even know that they have this sense of inadequacy. They're so involved with the world and the quick fixes, they do not even know that they have this problem. You see, if you look at the history of the slavery in US and all of that, and also in India, when people of Bharat were also as those slaves in many empires from outside which ruled here, that people didn't even know that they were slaves. That tragedy was that. So there is a twofold momentum now. One has to first realize that one is a slave. Then only you can seek freedom outside of that. Many people didn't even know that. Why? Because they were born in that atmosphere. Poor things. They were born in those estates. The second, third generation. Didn't even know that they are far away from their native land. They have been imprisoned by these people, the slave owners, and then they have been enslaved. So these great people who fought against slavery first had to make slaves realize that you are bound. So here also in India, when the freedom movement had to take full shape, so many these freedom fighters had to go from village to village, place to place, and make people recognize that they are bound under this colonial rule. So much wealth is being looted. Just because you are able to eat something and sleep, that doesn't mean that you are free. You are bound under this. So Vedanta is for this person who recognizes that one is bound. Otherwise, if you are already comfortable in samsara, why you had to come to ashram, isn't it so? If you are here because you have recognized that I can seek something more than this in my life. There must be something. If some things are making me feel inadequate, I want a solution for that. You may not have all these words clearly, you might not have well thought of, and then come here, but then this has happened. This has happened. That's why a person comes. Otherwise, you had hundreds of choices, right? You could have booked what is the nearest place. Masuri also is their hill station. You could have been as well there, or planned some other holiday. Somewhere thing. There were options endless. But a spiritual seeker recognizes that one wants to be free. One wants absolute freedom within. Then walks in Vedanta, then walks in Mother Veda, walks in Mother Bhagavad Gita to give us this knowledge. By absorbing this knowledge, one becomes free. One discovers freedom within. Discovers freedom within. So that is the role, importance, greatness of this Bhagavad Gita, which has been blessing generations after generations. It has inspired freedom fighters. It has inspired great Mahatmas. It has inspired Grihasthas. It has inspired Arjuna. It is inspiring modern Arjunas to wake up, get up, and find solution to the problem of life. So now we will start the exploration of this Bhagavad Gita through the select verses. You all can take your handout. I'll chant the verse, repeat after me. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Klaibyam Masmagamah Partha Naitatvayupapadyate Kshudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Kshudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Tyaktvottishta Parantapa Tyaktvottishta Parantapa. This is one of the most beautiful verses in Bhagavad Gita. Swami Vivekananda ji said, if the entire literature of Hinduism were to disappear one day, and if just this one verse is available, it is enough to revive the entire Hinduism, he said. He said that is the greatness of this particular verse. You see, you all know the context of Bhagavad Gita. I need not elaborate it. I need not tell it further. Arjuna is utterly confused on the battlefield, in spite of being a great king. That means what? In a particular situation, when adversity stares at your face, even the greatest of people may have a meltdown if there is no wisdom. But then the same Arjuna who had the meltdown in the beginning of the war of the Mahabharata, by absorbing this vision of the Gita, he stood up for his duties. He stood up to face life. He stood up not just to face life or war, all of that is there, and then it is also symbolic in the Vedantic context. This Arjuna finally says to Sri Krishna that Nashto Mohaha, my problem is solved. I feel free. I am free now. Having received this knowledge from you, O Krishna, I feel complete. I am free now. So in Mahabharata, in Bhagavad Gita itself, transformation of Arjuna is there. An Arjuna who was afraid, who was sentimental, who had a meltdown, who has a nervous breakdown because of his inability, confusion to face the situation. Because of the instruction, because of the knowledge given by Sri Krishna, he wakes up to his reality. He faces life. Not only that, he says, I have discovered joy and contentment in my heart. So, that should be the journey of every spiritual seeker. Even though sometimes everything may not be fine internally, one does have this opportunity to receive this knowledge and wake up. So, Sri Krishna, in the initial part of Bhagavad Gita, is trying to motivate Arjuna. And in this particular verse, Sri Krishna says, Hey Arjuna, Klaibhyam masmagaha. Do not be like this. Do not be cowardly. Why are you like this? Why are you acting like this? You are a king. Wake up to your reality. Own it, own up your position. Naitatvai upapadyate. This is not befitting you at all. This kind of a sentimentality. Because those of you who are little familiar with Gita, Arjuna gives all the philosophy to Sri Krishna first. why I why I should not fight this war? Why I should escape? You want to hear philosophy about something, go ask a person who is a lazy person who doesn't want to do something. He'll give you all the philosophy about life. So Arjuna was like that. He spoke great things. He goes to an extent that I will take sannyasa and just live my life based on bhiksha. Why have all this war and this and that in life? See, people, those who have this confusion, it was not about a war. It is not about pro-war, anti-war. Should we know that and all is this modern, unfortunate interpretations of Gita. Maybe it's a good title. At some point, I may write a book, Unfortunate Interpretations of Gita. That there are two things which are not at all related, and you try relating it and then try bringing out, squeezing out something out of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, war, this and that. It is not at all that. It's not just about war. It's about ruling an entire kingdom, to restore dharma, to restore order in society. What is to be done is to be done. If that is a war, that is a war. You see, then if all our soldiers say the same thing on Pak border and say, no, no, they were just this Chinese army in this Sichuan or whatever that these regions, or the Pak army which was coming. No, no, why do we want to fight with them? We all can take sannyas and come to Rishikesh and then live our life like this. How foolish it sounds. How foolish. Is it about war and anti-war and all? So if our Jawans say that, and then how will the stability of an entire nation be? So this has to be simple, has to be deeply understood. What is war? What for what cause? And some people write it was a family feud. The English interpreters of Mahabharata, when they write, it was a family feud between Pandavas and Kauravas, and Pandavas were not ready to compromise with 5 villages. So they fought the war where these lakhs and millions of people got killed. No, no. Arey, you have zero understanding of Mahabharata. It's not a family feud. So it's about a nation. It's about dharma. It's about order in the society. That has to be understood. Anyways, the context is this. Context is different here. So Shri Krishna is telling Arjuna, all these philosophies, this that you are talking doesn't befit your role as a king at all. Oh Arjuna, wake up to your reality. Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktottishtha parantapa. This petty behavior that you are showing, kshudram, hridaya daurbalyam, this weakness of heart, sentimentality. See, emotions are good in life, not sentimentality. So, hridaya daurbalyam is not emotions here, sentimentality, foolish sentiment. Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktva uttishta parantapa. Give up this and stand up to face life first. Other things we will see later. Tyaktvottishta parantapa. Arjuna, another word, another phrase for Arjuna, parantapa, great person. Wake up to your reality. Stand up in life first. Face life. First, so Bhagavad Gita, now from this verse you can understand philosophy of Gita, Vedanta is not for an escapist. One who wants to escape from life, you develop some philosophy and keep talking about it and life goes on. Not for an escapist. One who wants to face life in the middle of the life itself and discover a center, discover peace and joy, contentment, and face life as it comes. This is for such a person. So people who have an idea that, oh, maybe this is all for sannyasis, or maybe they're kind of escapists from the society, this and that, and then you give up everything, you go here and there. No, it's not that. It's a dynamic vision. It induces dynamism and strength into your life, if at all anything. So, Kshudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Tyaktva Uttishta Parantapa. Shri Krishna says, hey Arjuna, wake up first. Please stand up. First, recognize who you are. At whatever level you are, whatever level of identification you are having, first at least recognize that. Then, step by step, we will talk about this vision of Vedanta for you to solve your fundamental problem of life. That's what Shri Krishna is telling Arjuna. This verse, bear in mind. And bear in mind, why, that's why I added Bhagavanu Vacha also. Entire Gita teaching is from Shri Krishna. Please note that these are the words of Lord Krishna, not of mine, not of some book. Everybody has devotion for Krishna. I'm sure most of you, if you pass by a Krishna temple, you have an opportunity, you will pause for a while and then do namaskar, or then this thing, or modern people will send a flying kiss to Krishna like this and then keep moving ahead. But then, are we devoted to the words of the Krishna, words of Lord Krishna? We are very devoted to the Vigraha of the Krishna, the form of the Krishna. We worship, we offer mala, we put clothes, we do special pujas, we give naivedyam, we offer bhog. Or if a Krishna temple people come and ask us donation, we give, we're ready to give that also. But then, are you ready to listen to words of Krishna? That we sometimes we are not. We are not. Or we have to see whether I have the same devotion that I have for the form of the Krishna, to the Vigraha of the Krishna, and as same reverence and devotion do I have for the words of the Krishna. That's why Bhagavad Gita is so important, to direct words of Krishna, Lord Krishna. So with that in mind, have this verse. Any dull moment in life, any low moment you feel in the day to day, read this. It is as though Shri Krishna is giving this for all of us. Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktvottishta parantapa. Repeat after me. Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktvottishta parantapa. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.